a nice surprise. The crew is in the house. Stephen A., this is your 10th plane of the week?
Yes.
It is nice to see you, though. It's good to have you both here. Hi, Max. I'm Molly.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us on First Take, everybody. So before we dive into the Home Run Derby with our insider extraordinaire, Jeff Passan, Stephen A., I know you want to address your comments on Shohei Ohtani on yesterday's show.
Well, it's necessary. First of all, I'm a little under the weather today, so forgive me if I sound a little strange or whatever. I don't have the Rona.
Well, you've been on like 8 planes
but I do have
a
scratchy throat and a runny nose. Yep. And I'm glad Jeff Passan is going to be on the show. Let me be very clear. Could y'all put the camera on me, please? I don't need press releases. I don't need statements from the company. I don't need all of this other stuff. Let me be the first to stand up and say that I want to express my sincere apologies to the Asian community and the Asian American community. I am a black man. I religiously go off about minorities being marginalized in this nation. I instantly go off, repeatedly bring up the fact that if you are a member of a community that feels disenfranchised in any way, that's something that we need to battle, that we need to fend off to the best of our ability as a nation. These are the kind of things that I bring up. And the reason why I bring up my blackness is because of this. On many occasions, what I have said, when people have said something that is offensive in any way to the minority community, it's not about how you feel. It's about how they feel. And the reality of the situation is that you have Asians and Asian Americans out there that obviously were very, very offended by what I had to say yesterday. And I just want to look into the camera and extend my sincere apologies. That was not my intent at all, but I'm not going to get into all of that because I do understand that a lot of racists out there are quick to say that was not my intent. That's not where I'm going here. I was wrong, period. There's no excuse. This is not ESPN. This is not Disney. For a lot of people out there going off about Disney and ESPN, no. This was me. Wasn't Max. Wasn't Molly. Wasn't the producers on First Take. Wasn't the bosses. It was me. I said it. And the reality is that I was completely clueless as to the kind of impact that this would have on the Asian and the Asian American community. That was not my intent at all. And so I just want to say we're going to talk about a lot of things. Jeff Passan is going to be on the show today. June Lee is going to be on the show. I think Eduardo Perez is going to be on the show, along with a host of others. And I welcome this conversation. I don't have a problem with it, but I just want people to know, here's where I stand. The second that I was informed about how hurt a group of people in this nation was off of what I said, that's all that matters to me. All that matters to me, because I don't intend to hurt people like that. That's not who I am. That's not who I've ever been. If I have a problem with you, you know it. If I mean to offend you, you know it. I don't hide from it. I let you know I'm coming. That wasn't the case yesterday. But nevertheless, it doesn't negate the fact that they were detrimentally affected by my words. I have friends from the Asian American community that expressed their disappointment in what I had to say because of all the things that they have had to deal with, the anti-Asian stuff going on, the Asian hate that's been percolating in this nation over the last few years, and we all know to some degree why that is. I contributed to that yesterday, and that's inexcusable. So that's on me. And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community, and the Walt Disney and the ESPN, because I'm not about bringing this kind of attention to the company.
And you know
and I did yesterday, and that's on me.
I so appreciate about you, though. As soon as you realize you made the mistake, you apologize, you own it. There's no script. You look in front of the camera, and you said that you're wrong. And we're going to have a bigger conversation now, and I'm looking forward to that. And it's an important conversation that we need to have. Anything you wanted to add, Max, before I bring Jeff in?
Simply that I know Stephen A. Smith. We've been working together, I don't know how many years now.
5.
Stephen A. Smith is not only, he's counting the days, he's not only not racist. I can tell you he is not racist. Yeah. He is anti-racist. Stridently anti-racist.
Absolutely. It's a teachable moment for everyone. We have to continue to grow. Yep.
I want to also extend I did it on Twitter, but I also want to extend a personal apology to Ohtani himself, because going into the home run derby last night and having to deal with all of these headlines that I created, I certainly didn't intend for that to be the case either. So I certainly owe him an apology. I want to apologize to him, his loved ones, everybody that cares for him and is in his inner circle. Again, I owe him an apology as well. And I also don't want to escape, on a different note, the Nigerians as well, because the Nigerian team that beat Team USA, when I didn't pronounce someone's name, apparently they took offense to that. And I'm a guy who is a huge fan of Francis Ngannou and Israel Adesanya and Usman. I love that brother, the Nigerian Nightmare. And to listen to them over the years highlight what they've had to endure to achieve what they've achieved in this nation and throughout the world. Certainly, I want to make sure that I apologize to them as well. I was busy debating you about Team USA basketball, and then on my show, I also talked about how Kevin Durant had a shot blocked by a dude named Precious, because that was his name and what have you. And, you know, I was just trying to be funny and all of that other stuff, but they obviously took offense to that. I did not know. And so I apologize for that, and I'll do better, and that is that.
Yep. Do better every day. That's what we're here to do. Let's bring in our insider, Jeff Passan. Jeff, you got us?
I do have you guys. How are you, Molly?
Hey, Jeff. Thank you so much for being with us. I know it's a very busy time for you, but obviously you're much more intimately involved in the sport. Can you please speak to the significance of Shohei Ohtani?
Stephen A., I appreciate your willingness to apologize, because it shows that you will listen. And I feel like I have to tell a story here about Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani came to this country at 23 years old. He left behind his family, he left behind his culture, he left behind his country. He left behind everything he knows to go and pursue the American dream. He wanted to come here and be great. And he is the sort of person who this show and who this network and who this country should embrace. We are not the ones who should be trafficking in ignorance. We are not the ones who should be perpetuating false ideas that, unfortunately, far too many people out there believe. We should look at Shohei Ohtani as a bastion of what this country and this sports world is about. And you know what he's done? He has reached that greatness. He has achieved that. He has found it here in America. And he's done so without speaking English publicly, and he's done so speaking English to his teammates. The reality about Shohei Ohtani, Stephen A., is that he is a story that we should all be wanting to tell. And it's unfortunate that something like yesterday happened, but this gives us the opportunity to come out here today and talk about what Shohei Ohtani is doing. And what he's doing right now is something that we have not seen since Babe Ruth, something that we have not seen since Bullet Rogan and Double Duty Ratcliffe in the Negro Leagues, something I never thought that I would see again, which is someone who's starting the All-Star game today and batting first the day after putting on an electric performance in the Home Run Derby. You talked about yesterday how you on this show, addressed Shohei Ohtani only twice. Why? Look at what he's doing. That's what we should be asking ourselves. It's not that Shohei Ohtani doesn't speak English publicly and that people don't embrace him. It's that if people don't embrace him because he doesn't speak English publicly, they're the problem, not Shohei Ohtani.
Well, by the way, we addressed Shohei Ohtani, I think you said twice. I thought it was more than that. But Jeff, truth be told, that's more than we addressed any other baseball topic that wasn't scandal. That's much more a reflection of baseball's marginalization culturally over the last several decades than it is a reflection of what we feel about Shohei Ohtani, which, you just said it, he's done something that really no one's done since Babe Ruth, because no one's dominated both sides of the ball like this in any major, quote-unquote, major league around the world since Ruth. And when Babe Ruth did it, it was much easier to do. The samples were smaller. There were greater deviations from the mean as a result. The best player was much better. The worst player was much worse. And guys had day jobs and off-season jobs, and it wasn't a worldwide sport where 3 generations of training go into a kid. So what Ohtani's doing is completely unlikely. And for those who would argue that, well, the pitchers have the advantage now, so it's easier to pitch, well, then explain the league lead in home runs, triples, and slugging percentage. It's incredible.
Well,
Yeah, and listen, I'm glad that we are talking about him right now. A point you brought up yesterday, Stephen A., about marketing Ohtani. I have a 13-year-old. His two favorite players are Fernando Tatis Jr. and Shohei Ohtani. You know, Tatis does speak English, but he's from the Dominican Republic. Ohtani does not speak English publicly, but knows how to. My son doesn't care. You know what he cares about? He cares about the fact that Shohei Ohtani hits 450-foot home runs seemingly every day. And he cares about the fact that Fernando Tatis Jr. is like the coolest person that he has ever seen. That's what baseball needs. That is the language that sells itself to fans. It's not what anyone can say. Like, I ask you this in all seriousness. Stephen A., you have been in locker rooms and clubhouses for your entire professional career. Has an athlete ever said anything to you that makes you think, boy, I want to watch this game. I want to watch him play? No, we don't watch them for the words they say. We watch them for the things they do.
Okay, that's fair. But if we're going to be fair about it, and I'm certainly not implying that you're not, Jeff, you know me, I'm not running from any of this conversation again. My apologies is to the Asian and the Asian American community. Let me be very clear. I don't owe an apology to anybody else. I got a saying that when you mow the grass, the snakes come out. There's a whole bunch of people that's trying to jump on there. I see who they are, and I know who they are. I'm certainly not implying that you're one of them, Jeff. Please don't get me wrong. But you know what I'm talking about when I make a statement like that, because everybody's trying to jump on that bandwagon today. Y'all go right ahead. I'm right here. Ain't nobody running from this conversation. I will ask you a question, Jeff Passan, because I love the fact that you want to have this discussion. Do I get an opportunity to sit here and, as ignorant as it may be, to simply ask you a question or engage in a conversation and give you an individual's perspective that you simply may agree or disagree with? Because a lot of times we give apologies and then we want to run away. I don't want to run away. I want to stay right here, and I want the Asian community, I want the Asian American community, I want the white community, I want the black community. I want everybody to look at me and say, hey, if I'm ignorant about something, highlight it so we can correct it and move the conversation forward and make things better. Jeff Passan, now let me ask you this question. Having said all of that, does baseball market Ohtani or anybody else to a satisfactory degree in your estimation?
No, it's been a problem for a long time now.
Stop right there.
And you're not wrong when you say that.
You got to stop right there. Why don't they do that in your estimation?
I think that baseball has had a problem reaching through to the younger generation because for the longest time it was holding on to this notion that the way the game has been played, the people inside of the game are stuck back in the 1950s and 1960s and 1970s. And I think that has changed slowly but surely. Okay. I think that has changed with the emergence of Fernando Tatis Jr., with the dynamism of Ronald Acuna Jr., and this year with Shohei Ohtani finally doing what he was supposed to do when he came over in 2018. This isn't a situation, I think, where the tail wags the dog. This is where the players have to lead the sport to the right place and embrace it. And if your argument here is that Shohei Ohtani is not out there publicly enough doing commercials and advocating for Major League Baseball, good. Because
that wasn't my argument. That wasn't my argument. That's where I'm going with all of this. Because see, my point is, first of all, let me be very, very clear. It's not an interrogation here. I'm the one that was wrong, not you. So I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate us having this conversation. I just don't want to be a phony like I know a lot of people have been in the past in terms of when they give apologies. I want to be real about it, and I want to put my ignorance on display to some degree, because I want to make sure that this is not an issue that the Asian or the Asian American community ever has to deal with again. What I'm trying to say is this.
Stephen, can I tell you a story? Can I tell you a story? Because I had my own moment 3 years ago with Shohei Ohtani where I had to apologize. Back in spring training, I wrote a column after talking with scouts that said Shohei Ohtani is going to have trouble hitting in the big leagues. And it fell on its face. And a month later, I didn't just write an apology. No, I think it was like a week later. I didn't just write an apology, Stephen A. What I did was I went back and I looked at what I had done wrong. I looked at, why did I write this? The people who I talked with. Were they all a certain age, of a certain background, of a certain race? Did they all have the same sort of education and maybe fell to the same biases? I dissected what I did wrong. I did an autopsy on myself and how I approach things. And that's all I want anyone to ever do. And I appreciate us having this conversation is part of your autopsy. And I appreciate that because we all need to be better. And your commitment to doing so right here by talking about this, by taking responsibility, is a good thing and something that's going to make you better as a person and on this show as well.
I thank you for saying that because that's exactly where I'm going with this, which is why I want to reveal my ignorance. I want the Asian and the Asian American community. I want the Latino community and others. I want them to know where I was coming from to correct me. Because again, I may not have known. So Jeff, here's what I'm saying. As a black man looking at Major League Baseball, watching the populace of Major League Baseball dissipate to hovering around 6 to 8%, even though they've got reviving baseball in the inner cities, the RBI program and other things that they've tried to do. When you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at the younger demographic, and you hear all the noise that we've been hearing about baseball, and Max and Molly and myself, along with everybody on this show, can attest to the fact that in most instances, one of the biggest reasons why we find ourselves talking about basketball, football, combat sports, as opposed to baseball, is because when we do talk about baseball, that's when the numbers dip.
And we love baseball.
And we love baseball.
Jeff, we love baseball.
I love my Yankees. Max.
It's Max's number one sport.
It's Max's number one sport, Jeff. And put Jeff up on the screen so I can see Jeff, please. What I'm saying is that when people are looking at the sport of baseball and they're wondering what was wrong, my point was it wasn't about Ohtani's greatness because we all know that he's great. And by the way, he speaks 3 different languages. And oh, by the way, the man is the closest thing to Babe Ruth that we've seen in some people's eyes. We all recognize that. But I was speaking to marketing the sport and what hiccups Major League Baseball might be entertaining in its own mind as to what works and what doesn't. And all I'm saying is that could be entirely wrong because from everything that I've heard, every time Ohtani shows up at a baseball park, the ballpark is packed, the house is packed. I get all of that. I'm just saying that as you look at Major League Baseball from a promotional perspective, that's the potential hiccup that they may have looked at. And if I'm wrong about that, please educate me. I have no problem with it. Which is why I'm happy that we're having this discussion and you bring up the word autopsy, which I think is a great word in this particular instance, because there damn sure needs to be an autopsy on what I've had to say, and I have no issue with it whatsoever. I really don't.
Major League Baseball needs to do better there. There is no question about it. But it's a lot easier to do better when you have somebody like Shohei Ohtani who is displaying the skills that he is, when you have somebody like Tatis who has the swag that he does. I'm not going to sit here, Stephen A., and say that Major League Baseball has done a great job of marketing itself. The game is too slow. Honestly, the game is boring sometimes. That's just a fact. That's a reality. But they are taking steps, and I don't know if they're the right ones. It's a difficult thing to do amid this landscape where you've got the NBA, the NFL, MMA, the NHL, Euros. You've got all these things going on to differentiate your sport. But the truth is, Stephen A., the more you talk about baseball, the more people are going to watch it because they listen. And they want to see it on these airwaves.
The one thing baseball has going for it more than any other sport, any other team sport, is history and its traditions, its best traditions. And the reason statistics are so important is because we like comparing across eras, and we have this enormous volume of statistical information. And that's where Ohtani is great marketing the sport, because you can trade on baseball's 100-plus year history at the highest levels and compare him and to people who played over 100 years ago and point out there's a reason this hasn't been done in over a century.
Yeah, and home runs are a universal language. We all agree on that. And when we know better, we do better. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. I do want to tag by saying this when we're speaking of diversity and inclusion. MLB is committing up to $150 million to the Players Alliance. That's aimed at increasing black representation in the sport. Rob Manfred saying, we want young people, period, playing the game, particularly young people of color. So strong message from the commissioner. Jeff, we'll talk to you soon.
Jeff, thank you.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Still to come on First Take, we just heard obviously from Jeff Passan, but June Lee joins us later to dive even deeper into Ohtani and his significance beyond baseball. That very candid discussion one-on-one with Stephen A. in just a bit. Nobody is hiding. Plus, deja vu. Team USA loses another tune-up game before Tokyo. This time, Australia got the best of them. We'll bring on Perk to react to the L. Carry on. The Americans fall again. Previously, Team USA was 54-2 in exhibition games, and now we've already reached that loss total in Vegas. Is it time to panic ahead of Tokyo? Damian Lillard led Team USA with 22 points. KD scored 17. Bradley Beal finished with 12. Here's Coach.
You know, you asked the same sort of question, the same family of question last time, where you assume things that are not true. When you just mentioned, you know, blowing these teams out, that's never happened. So I don't know where you get that. Can I finish? Can I finish?
You're saying that's not true. Your average mark
Can I finish my statement?
is like 30 points a game. In those last two tournaments that I was talking about.
Can I finish my statement? When you talk,
You just told me that it's not true, and I'm telling you your average mark.
are you going to let me finish my statement or not? So you'll be quiet now while I talk, and then I'll listen to you. When you make statements about in the past just blowing out these other teams, number one, you give no respect to the other teams. And I talked to you last time about the same thing. We've had very close games against 4 or 5 countries in all these tournaments. So the good teams do not get blown out. There are certain games that might happen in one of the tournaments, in the World Championship, the Olympics, where somebody gets blown out. But in general, nobody's blowing anybody out for the good teams. So when you make a statement like that, it's like you assume that's what's going on. And that's incorrect.
Okay, things getting testy there with Coach Popovich. Stephen A., what is the problem with Team USA?
First of all, I don't think that was, I originally heard about Greg Popovich being testy. I actually don't think that was testy at all. I thought that that was very, very respectful to the reporter. He's saying, let me finish my statement. And he's saying, you have reportedly said, you have reported things that I believe have been incorrect on numerous occasions. Let me speak, and then I'll listen to what you have to say. I actually thought that was one of Popovich's better moments.
I agree.
To be quite honest with you, I didn't think he was. I didn't find that to be testy.
Because he said, then I'll listen to you. Let me finish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me finish, and then I'll listen to you. Now, having said all of that, let's just call this what it is. KD, Damian Lillard, and the rest of these guys on that team, particularly the stars, but especially KD, even though he is a champion, a 2-time champion and the 2-time NBA Finals MVP, they're going to have to wake up and recognize the fact that you can end up being severely tarnished if this continues. Now, we all look at USA basketball, Team USA, Molly and Max, and we recognize something that has changed. Back in the day, in international play, the USA was a juggernaut, and they made you play their way. They were led by the stars, which is the point Max was making to his credit. Now, instead of forcing the Europeans to play their way, the Europeans have forced Team USA to play their way. That's why you got a roster filled with a bunch of shooters and no true big man presence. Your definition of a big man is Draymond Green and Bam Adebayo and Kevin Love. Okay? So understand they're forcing you to play their way now. And by playing their way, you're not looking too great at doing it. In the end, we're not going to dissect it that way. In the end, we're going to sit up there and say when LeBron was playing, they won. When D-Wade was playing, they won. When Kobe was playing, they won. Even though Kevin Durant was on those teams too. But because he's clearly the leader of this team, and Damian Lillard is a superstar player, if they continue to lose like this, you're going to look at them and you're going to say, what the hell happened?
What's the problem with Team USA? It's the same problem in college when you have the most talented team, but they're a bunch of one-and-dones, and they play a team of guys. Maybe none of them will be NBA stars, but some of them might be in NBA rotations, but they played together for 2-3 years. They're upperclassmen now. They've played together. They've committed to each other, to the team, and they have some talent. They have some, like, real NBA-ish talent. They can beat a more talented team that hasn't played together for very long, that's not as committed or invested. That's why the upperclassmen of like a mid-major, they can beat a one-and-done powerhouse sometimes. And that's what's happening right now. This is like a one-and-done powerhouse. And when the Team USA is constructed, when you have, let's say it was a team of Steph, Harden, Kawhi, LeBron, and KD in the starting five, then none of this stuff matters because at a certain point, you have so much talent, it's just not going to matter. Look at the Brooklyn Nets whenever they were almost healthy, right? But when you start to degrade that roster, and now it's not all MVP caliber players, it's MVP caliber players with all-stars and maybe some guys who are only sometimes all-stars. Now these guys have to be committed. The teams that Team USA are playing, Stephen A., by and large, have multiple players, a core of players who have multi-year commitments to their country's team, to their national team, who've played together for some time, and have a handful of guys who can make NBA rosters, who are on NBA rosters. Who was Durant blocked by last night? Thibault, clean block. He could do that in the NBA too. So yesterday, when we started, we said, is this roster a problem? I thought it was. Then yesterday, we asked, after the first loss to Nigeria, is this a problem? I said, not yet. Now we see it as a problem. 2 losses in a row, we see it's a problem. They played better, but not well enough, consistently enough throughout the game. They're playing teams who want it more. This is the biggest stage they'll ever play on. Most of the team isn't hoping to win an NBA title one day, like most of Team USA is. They want it more. They're more committed. They play together. They've been playing together longer. Either Team USA really starts to want it and commit to each other, or we got to send even better players than we're sending.
Wait, so is it want or talent?
Well, it's not about talent. I think it's the wanting. And I think that, think about it, when they lost, I think it was in 2004. I mean, as Larry Brown was coaching the team and what have you. And I mean, that was not a good thing. What was happening there was not a good thing with Iverson and the crew and LeBron and them all on the younger that they were on the squad, and they did not win. And then they felt the need to elevate the level of urgency and get, Mike Krzyzewski up in there. Jerry Colangelo became managing director, and obviously you picked the star-studded roster, and they went and represented not 1, not 2, but 3 consecutive Olympics from 2008 to 2016. Now you've gone the way back to 2004. In other words, we're at the top of the heap. We don't need to have the, quote, creme de la creme in order to win the gold, which is something that I still maintain. See, I'm not talking, I'm assuming that you're incredibly committed. I'm saying that from a talent perspective, there should be no issue. I'm looking at the talent on this squad. You should be playing better. You should be more effective. And right now, if Kevin Durant, who is clearly the face and the leader of this squad, is associated with a collapse in Olympic play, particularly coming off of what just happened to Brooklyn, as spectacular as he was, we all know that. Kyrie gets hurt. If Kyrie isn't hurt, I believe they're in the finals right now. All right, James Harden, same thing. But that doesn't negate the shrapnel of criticism that inevitably is going to come his way, because people out there are going to look at him as the leader, and this is what happened on your watch.
I have a question, one thing with something you said, Stephen A. When you say it's us not playing the European way, what do you mean by that?
Well, what happens is that the style of play itself, I mean, some of the rules that have been implemented, the fact that they built this roster the way that they have, you've got 3-point shooters, you don't have a true bona fide big man in the middle, and that matters, if Joe, not that he's from America, but if Joel Embiid was on this roster or somebody like that, that would be different. Because you'd have a big man presence to throw the ball to in the middle or whatever. But by having this roster assembled the way that you did, you basically said there's a style of play that they implement here, overseas, and we think that's the way to go. Although and it's not working for you.
When you think of all the best big men in the league, other than AD, who's like a 4-5, Embiid, not an American player.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Right, he wouldn't be playing for Team USA.
Not an American player.
Freak,
not American.
So is the sport becoming more global? Is that part of the issue? And it's not that we're putting out a bad product?
No, not a bad product. It just goes without saying the rest of the world has caught up. That's why now it requires us, if you want to be assured of a gold, even if they haven't played together a long time, Steph, Harden, Kawhi, LeBron, KD would never not win every game. They're just not capable of not winning every game. But once you get any lower than the greatest team ever, you can lose. Because, think about it like this. Let's say you took an all-star team.
Yeah.
And not all starters, 3 starters and 2 reserves on an all-star team. And they played a team that didn't make the playoffs. But it's the middle of the season, and these guys haven't played together on the all-star team even once. And the team that didn't make the playoffs has just played 40 games together. Right. The team that didn't make the playoffs might beat them. That's what's happening.
Well, go ahead.
Well, listen. There's no real big man presence, like I said.
Yeah.
And devoid of the mega stars who have that intimidation factor going for them. You've put yourself in the eyes of these European players, you've put yourself on an even scale with them. And so they have no fear whatsoever. Do they respect Team USA? Of course they do. But they have no fear. And so when you realize they have no fear and they're coming at you like, who the hell are you? This is who we are. That's where the big names on the roster are going to be held accountable when they come back to the States. If you're KD, you want to be mentioned in the same breath as LeBron and others. You don't want any question marks about that. Yeah. That's how this stuff works out.
If you also make the rules a little easier, like you bring in the three-point line a little bit, that makes everybody a better three-point shooter. Yeah. That favors, whenever you make things a little easier, it favors the less talented team because it makes the lesser players a little bit better. So there are a lot of marginal advantages that don't go for Team USA. And on top of that, these guys have played together and are committed.
Of course, and it's that everything to gain, nothing to lose attitude. I just want to say that when you mentioned like Steph, Harden, I think Kawhi, Kyrie, a lot of those guys dealt with injuries this season. So do we even really want to see them out there? No. That's the other question too.
For sure. What I mean is if you took our very best Team USA,
of course,
even with everything we're talking about, they'd still win all the games because at a certain point there's just too much talent. That's not the team we sent.
All right, we'll leave it there, guys. Still to come, what team, this is a great question, will LeBron be most remembered for when it's all said and done, when he hangs it up? The Cavs, the Heat, or the Lakers? Wait till you hear the fellas answer that. Plus, next, we've got June Lee joining us to discuss Shohei Ohtani, his significance to baseball right now and for many years to come. Stay tuned for that. Shohei Ohtani has been doing unprecedented things this season, and now he'll continue that on one of baseball's biggest stages as the two-way star will start on the hill and bat leadoff for the American League team in the 2021 All-Star Game on Tuesday in Colorado. Ohtani showing up for the fans. Here's Dave Roberts.
Well, we did. We wanted him. He didn't.
So did we.
He didn't pick us. So we did, but until you know, you don't. And so to see it kind of play out like it has, we're all fans of baseball, and to see something that really hasn't been done in generations is, where in my opinion, it's the best talent ever in baseball, 1 through 850 or whatever, and for him to be this marquee player, it's remarkable.
High praise from Roberts. We now welcome in ESPN staff writer June Lee for a candid conversation. June, first let me say, I love the fit. I love the flavor. You're bringing a first take. We need that. Thank you so much for being with us and doing this conversation with Stephen A. And Stephen A., I'll let you take it away.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot. And thanks, June, for coming on. They told me that you was going to be on First Take, and then you and I spoke last night, and you can reveal whatever you want about that conversation that you and I had last night. You can choose to pick, you can choose to articulate and expose everything that we talked about to your liking. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to make sure that you and everybody in the Asian American community understood that I was deeply sorry for any kind of feelings that I caused, period. The reality is that I told you last night on the phone, as a black man, I repeatedly found myself in situations throughout my career where you're trying to tell somebody, excuse me, this is offensive to us. And all they're focused on is what their intent was and how they feel, as opposed to how the offended party feels. And I don't want to be that individual. I'm not Asian. I'm not Asian American. I have no idea how you feel, or actually I didn't until we spoke last night, along with some other folks that I had spoken to, obviously, as this stuff percolated and really gained steam. So please take the floor and feel free to express whatever you want to express about what I had to say. And again, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I wanted to take a moment to explain from the perspective of someone in the AAPI Asian American community why there was this reaction yesterday. I think the way that the comments came across and were received by people, by myself personally, by my friends, by my cousin who I talked to on the phone, it was a lot of exacerbating and kind of furthering the narrative of the perpetual foreigner stereotype, which goes into this idea that Asian Americans or Asian people in this country, regardless of what they do, because they come from a culture in the East, there's a cultural gap there that is often hard to bridge because the East and the West just value different things, and there's also the language gap as well. I came to the United States when I was 2 months old. English is my second language. My mom came over here, did not really know how to speak English fluently, so this is something that was incredibly personal to me. And so hearing that on television and hearing someone say that someone needs to learn English in order to be the face of baseball, I feel like it was a topic of conversation that really hit for me personally. I think hit for a lot of other people in the Asian American community as well, and furthers this idea that regardless of what we do and what we accomplish in this country, that we will never be American. There's this idea that the model minority needs to kind of keep their head down and not speak up about their experience as being American, and I think that dynamic is changing a lot over the course of the last year or so. We've seen the Stop Asian Hate movement. We've seen people on television, news stories, more news coverage about what is happening in the Asian American community, and that is a marked change from what I experienced growing up as a Korean American in the suburbs of Boston, Massachusetts. But the fact that we're even having this conversation on television in the first place, the fact that this is even a controversy, I think speaks to the larger fact that so much of the Western media, American media, us at ESPN are so unprepared to talk about Asian Americans in a nuanced way that speaks authentically to our experience in this country. Some of that falls on us in needing to speak up about what it's like to be Asian American, but it also falls on the institutions, on ESPN, on other media outlets covering the Asian American community to know about the generational history, the generational trauma in this country, the killing of Vincent Chin, the internment camps of Japanese Americans during the course of World War II, and how that affects kind of how we talk about Asian Americans. And we've seen this across the board, in the course of how Asian Americans have been in pop culture, the way that BTS is covered, the way that Jeremy Lin was covered during the Heart of Linsanity. There was an incident that happened here at ESPN where there was an insensitive headline, a racist headline that was put out there, and people are not aware of how that kind of discourse affects the Asian American community. So I wanted to take this opportunity to speak up about how yesterday's discourse and how what you said on television yesterday affected the Asian American community, and how it's on ESPN and on the rest of the media institutions to be able to speak about Asian American community, because this is the reality of our authentic existence in this country.
Well, first of all, I appreciate all of that you just said, and it was a lot there. So let me try to compartmentalize and get to it. And let me say first this. We can't have a discussion about it if I'm not willing to put my ignorance on display.
Absolutely.
See, to me, the problem is that when you have folks that make mistakes, they double down, they try to defend it, and then want to run and don't want to talk about it. See, I want to be able to talk. I want to be able to talk about it, and I want to be able to expose my level of ignorance so you can then piggyback off of that, combat it, and we can knock down some of these barriers that you've alluded to that you guys face as members of the Asian and the Asian American community and beyond. So I want to do that, okay? So I'm coming at you with this, willing to put myself on Front Street just so we can move this conversation forward. And this is not something that ever has to happen to anybody again. I was wrong. It's on me. It's not on ESPN. It's not on Walt Disney. Not on Molly, Max, anybody first. That's me. I said it, okay? Now let's get to this. When I spoke, as I said to Jeff Passan earlier today, the first segment of the show, we're talking about baseball. Ignorantly, I wasn't thinking about any of the things you just mentioned at all. I was thinking about the sport of Major League Baseball is having a problem ingratiating itself with the younger demographic. Unlike the NBA, unlike the NFL, that younger audience is not gravitating towards baseball, which means that baseball's audience is only getting older, which explains why Rob Manfred, the commissioner, and others within the sport of Major League Baseball feel compelled to do something about it. So the multitude of changes, Julie, as you know, covering the sport the way that you do, all these changes that they've made. And what I was trying to say, ultimately and ignorantly, is that a guy like Ohtani, because he's a guy that has an interpreter, is that going to successfully go about the business of ingratiating you with the younger audience to promote the sport of baseball? I had no idea until you and so many others explained all the tentacles that statements like I made yesterday had attached to it, and the kind of detrimental effect that had on the Asian and the Asian American community. And that's why I wanted to apologize. And I want to be educated because I want to make sure that not just me, but all of us are capable of recognizing what are the kind of thoughts that permeate through you guys' minds so we can avoid thinking that way, feeling a certain way, acting a certain way that's detriment to your community and basically to all of us, because as far as I'm concerned, we're all a part of the same community. Your thoughts about that? Please take it away.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation on national television right now, I'm hoping is going to help further this discourse and move it forward, because if we deny the fact that Asian Americans have this existence in this country, you're only kind of putting barriers to making, the idealistic idea of this kind of discourse happening in public more difficult to have happen. Now, in regards specifically to the way that Major League Baseball is marketing its players, we saw a generation of young players with Mike Trout and Bryce Harper, MLB really pushing them, two white guys who the sport really pushed out in front, and they didn't really stick. And I think the difference between what happened with Mike Trout and Bryce Harper is that the fans chose Shohei Ohtani as the face of baseball. This is something that's happened organically. And I think it's emblematic of a couple things. Number one, I think it's emblematic of the fact that sports has this power to transcend language for athletes to be stars even without hearing what they're doing. Just the mere fact of Ohtani's kind of generational insane talent doing something that nobody has done in theory since Babe Ruth is so eye-catching. I feel like it's hard for us as sports consumers to even process what is happening, but I also think it speaks to this general idea that the globalism across the world is continuing to grow. I spoke about BTS earlier. They've shown that they can be a commercial successful group in the United States and across the world without having songs that are in English. And I feel like that ties to this because Shohei Ohtani is not speaking English, and there is a way to market Shohei Ohtani, and this falls on MLB, it falls on Shohei Ohtani's representation, it falls on the media institutions as a whole to market Shohei Ohtani better, despite the fact that he doesn't speak English.
But Joe, excuse me for interrupting, because where I'm going is this. Based on what you just said, do you believe baseball feels that way? Do you believe baseball has shown any evidence that they feel exactly what you just pointed out? Because I'm challenging whether or not that's the case for them. I know what they need to do because the world has changed. All right. Globally, the world has changed. It's not what it used to be. It's certainly not what it used to be in America. Clearly, you don't have to market a white individual in order to elevate the profile of a sport in this day and age. But do you believe baseball believes that?
I think baseball is starting to get there. I think there was evidence of this at the beginning of the season where if you looked at MLB's Twitter page, one of the front-facing platforms for MLB, their entire banner was a lot of minority players. It was Fernando Tatis Jr., it was Juan Soto, it was Ronald Acuna Jr., it was Mookie Betts. They're starting to realize that what makes baseball different from the rest of the American sports landscape is this cultural diversity, the fact that you have people from different countries. And I think you're seeing this emblematic in the game and the shift in the unwritten rules on the field, the fact that bat flips are now an acceptable thing, that self-expression is now an acceptable thing, that sneaker culture is starting to kind of leak onto the field through the cleats, people wearing Jordans on the field, people wearing painted cleats on the field. You're starting to see this self-expression on the field that you didn't see before, and it's starting to show that baseball has all these cultures come together, right? And I think the baseball clubhouse in many ways is so emblematic in both good ways and bad ways of America as a whole, because you see so much of the kind of cultural diversity and the cultural segregation within the clubhouse reflected in the cultural spirit of America as well in our current moment.
I wanted to ask what you think about this real quick, because a friend of mine who hosts his own radio show on Urban View, Sirius XM Radio, Channel 126, his name is Joe Madison. They call him the Black Eagle. He's been around for a very, very long time. I've known him for years. Love the man. He sent me a quote yesterday. He sent me something. I want to know what your reaction is to this. He said, what do you call someone who speaks, basically, this is a quote that he pulled. What do you call someone who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 1 language? American. That's what he said. That's what he sent me. That he sent me, and I was like, damn, it is true. And I wanted to know, what do you feel about that quote, and how much do you feel a quote like that impacts the Asian and the Asian American community in terms of how Americans in this day and age view folks who, are from a different place than obviously the United States of America, particularly as it pertains to the sport of baseball?
Well, I think we're starting to have a shifting discussion and discourse around what it means to be American in this country, and I think that transcends the idea of sports. When I was growing up, there weren't any Asian Americans other than Pablo Torre and Mina Kimes and Michael Kim on ESPN, and now I'm sitting in this position as a bilingual, non-American-born person talking to you guys about what it means to be American, and I also speak multiple languages, and I'm doing it in my technical second language. So I think it's interesting in that I think this is a continuing conversation that Americans as a whole are going to have is, what is this idea of what it means to be American? Why do we have these assumptions of what it means to be American? And what is that idea of what it means to be American going to be as we move forward?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks. And I really, really appreciate the conversation that we had last night, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you having this conversation with me.
Yeah,
No problem.
and I just want to mention Ohtani, the first player to ever be selected as a position player and a pitcher. And as you astutely mentioned, the fans picked him. So seminal moment right there. It's so nice to have you on, June. And I know I speak for myself, everyone at First Take, ESPN, Disney, we want to be inclusive. We want to continue to have this conversation. So please continue to call us out because we want to get better and know that you have allies in us here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, guys. When we come back to the association, we go. Big Perk making his return to First Take. Last week, he said the Suns are about to take the league by storm for many years. Max, since tomorrow night on ABC, Giannis trying to keep that momentum going in front of a home crowd, building off his 41-point board performance as the Suns lead 2-1. And that's who Kendrick Perkins is focused on. The scorching hot Suns in this scorching hot take.
When I look at this Phoenix Suns team, I look at this fan base that they have created, this culture. They are eye candy now to all around the NBA to come here and play with these young up-and-coming superstars. This is why I say the Phoenix Suns are on the verge of being a dynasty. Carry the hell on.
Well, the language. Hi, Perk. I missed you. It's good to have you back on, and I'm glad you're not out there in that scorching heat again. You were taking one for the team out there, out in that heat. But we're gonna get the guys' reaction to what you just had to say there, because when I think dynasty, Max, I think the Warriors, the Patriots. Do you agree the Suns will be the next dynasty?
No. First of all, you have to beat the Bucks first. You haven't even done that. Secondly, you were lucky to get to the finals. Lucky. Like, the Lakers had to get hurt. Don't forget, they were up 2-1. The Clippers had to get hurt. Don't forget, Kawhi didn't play the whole series. They still got to a Game 6. The Nets had to get hurt. They were spanking the Bucks and would have destroyed this Suns team if healthy. So due to injury, a compressed schedule, the whole thing, the Suns might win the chip this year. Perk, you and I were both very high on them preseason, maybe a top 5 type team. But that does not a dynasty make. They'd have to win the championship this year, do it again next year to show people it wasn't just everyone else got hurt. And to be a dynasty, you should probably also in the next 2 or 3 years win another one. That is a long way away, and I don't see that in their future.
Go ahead, Perk. I'll let you respond first.
Well, first of all, Max, let me tell you this, all right? You need a little luck when you're trying to win a championship. And let's not act like every team that won a championship didn't have luck on their side when it comes down to injuries. Because I can recall the Golden State Warriors, when they won their first championship, they were lucky because Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were both out, okay? And when you look at the Golden State Warriors, let's stay on them for a second. Did anybody think that they would have become a dynasty? When they first got started, when Steph Curry was drafted there, he dealt with all those ankle injuries. Klay Thompson was drafted there. Draymond Green, 2nd round pick. Did anybody think they would become a dynasty? No, absolutely not. Here's why I think the Phoenix Suns can become a dynasty, and they're on the verge of becoming a dynasty. It's for the simple fact, you look at DeAndre Ayton. He's on the rise. He's a walking 20 and 10 guy. He's 22 years of age. He's far from scratching the surface of his prime. You look at Devin Booker, me, Max, and Stephen A. all think Devin Booker is a superstar, which he is. He's 24 years of age. You look at Mikal Bridges, a number 10 pick. He has the potential to continue to grow. Now, when you look at this culture, you look at a young Monty Williams, a guy that's not even 50 years old yet, has developed this culture along with James Jones, who is well respected around the league, and they go on to win a championship this year. Guess what? I said it then and I said it before. They are eye candy, meaning they are an attractive place to come to, attractive place to come and play with, right? To come play at. When you look at Phoenix, yes, it's hot as hell down there, but it's still not a bad city. Scottsdale is pretty damn good. But when you look around, you look at guys like Donovan Mitchell. How long is he's going to be in Utah and deal with that, what he got around him? What is his patience going to look like? We saw what Kevin Durant did. He saw Golden State playing inspiring basketball. He saw their culture. He went over there. Who's to say Donovan Mitchell, a guy like Donovan Mitchell, wouldn't go to Phoenix? So when I say this, I'm saying this looking at where their young stars are and that they're now an attractive place to play in.
Kendrick Perkins, here's where I disagree with you, and I agree with Max, even though it's not for the same reasons that Max articulated. You said the Phoenix Suns are the NBA's next dynasty. You didn't say they have the potential to be. I know that, I'm being picky there, but that matters. And the reason why I say that matters is because, A, when you talk about they have the potential for people to come there, they got to get there first, okay? That's number one, because as presently constructed, this isn't the next dynasty. And number two, and more importantly, Perk, we don't know if CP3 going to stay there. That's a big deal. Because when you got a floor general like that, who's a leader on and off the court, who the players gravitate to, that has had a profound impact on this team. What happens if he decides, well, I'm getting paid $44 million this year, but I'm opting out, which he's expected to do, because I'm looking for 3 years and $100 million from somewhere else, and I think I can get it, particularly if I win a championship, and that place might not be Phoenix. What if it's L.A., Perk? Because guess what? The family still lives in L.A. That's why he's in Phoenix, because, again, he's close enough to L.A. to get to them, but in the same breath, okay, he's still not there to, because he's focusing on his basketball, whatever. But if he decides to go to L.A. and play with LeBron, what then? So I think that we got to look at it from that perspective and hold off on the dynasty proclamations. Clearly, they got a shot. They have the potential. I don't disagree with that at all, Perk. I'm just not ready to go there yet.
And Perk, real quick, the Warriors would never have been a dynasty if KD didn't go there. They were lucky to win in 2000. Yeah, I'm saying they were lucky in 2015 that Kyrie and Kevin Love got hurt. They lost in 16. Then they got Kevin Durant and won 2 more. Perk, if the Suns get KD, I stand corrected. Otherwise, that ain't a dynasty.
Max, okay, and that goes back to my point. You just made it even more valid. My point is that KD went to Golden State. Why? Because it was an attractive place. Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, he made it attractive. That's why Kevin Durant went there. Okay, that's what I'm telling you about the Phoenix Suns. Stephen A., to your point, LeBron James and Chris Paul ain't getting no younger. These guys are scratching the surface of being 40 years of age. When I look at what Devin Booker, the leadership, when I look at the growth of DeAndre Ayton, I'm watching Devin Booker. It's not CP3 that's talking in the huddle right now. It's Devin Booker. That means that goes to show me that CP3 has rubbed off on them. Okay? And when you look at what Devin Booker did when CP3 was out, what did he do, Stephen A? He dropped a 40-point triple-double, meaning he was able to get his and get others around him better. So when I say this, I'm looking at it again. I'm not saying I have no insight or whatever the case may be, but I know Donovan Mitchell has a choice. I know Donovan Mitchell is not going to just be in Utah wasting all his years of his prime sitting there dealing with Rudy Gobert down there in Utah and not getting to where he's trying to go. So what I'm saying is if you could attract some guys, if you could get some guys to maybe say, hey, I want to go to Phoenix, trade me there, then yeah, you can become a dynasty, and you are a dynasty. But I'm looking at this team right now. CP3 comes back along with having a general manager in James Jones. Let's not forget that. A champion, a guy that grew up under Pat Riley, a guy that knows, that has an eye for the talent, an eye for the game, that could go out there and recruit pieces like he did with Jay Crowder and Torrey Craig. That's how.
Kirk, if you had your choice right now,
starts from the top.
If you had your choice right now, and you were a player, and you could either go to Phoenix and play with that team, or LA and play with LeBron and AD, or even Kawhi and Paul George and them, where are you going to go?
I'm going to Phoenix. I'm going to Phoenix with Bonnie Williams. I'm going to Phoenix with Monty Williams, Mark Bryant, Willie Green.
Hold on, Perks. Guess what, Max? I agree with Perk there. You know why? You know why I agree with him? Because if I'm Chris Paul, right, I've already won there. If they win the championship this year, if I'm a free agent who's got talent, I'm looking at the talent that's there. And I'm saying, excuse me, they've already won. So it's not like they're scrubs or anything like that. In other words, I wouldn't summarily dismiss the notion that somebody would choose Phoenix over LA, considering all that Perk just said. I wouldn't dismiss that. It's possible.
I think there's
some players would say yes.
I agree, but I think most players in the end are like they can be in LA and play with LeBron and AD.
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, first of all, AD is continuously hurt. All right, LeBron's not getting any younger, and state income taxes are significantly more in LA than it is in California than it is in Arizona.
Got a lot more money out there in Scottsdale to spend. They got some nice spas out there.
Our man Will Bond, he visits Los Angeles. He stays in California.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, in Arizona. He stays in Arizona.
Keeps his racks in
Visit
place.
California.
And once upon a time, they could attract high-profile players, Charles Barkley and others like
Barkley.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to LA.
Barkley visits California, lives in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, if they sign Charles Barkley or Kevin Durant, they'll be a dynasty.
Money.
All right. Well, I'll just wrap this up with my favorite stat on the show. That Perk's right 70% of the time, 100% of the time. So stick with that. I am never going to let you live that down. I love that, Perk. All right. He's sticking around here with us, guys.
Anchorman.
Patty Mills, Matthew Dellavedova got the best of Team USA yesterday. And no, you did not mishear that. Is it time for Team USA to panic? Plus, in just a bit, we're wondering which of LeBron's 3 teams he'll be most remembered for when it's all said and done. Surely the Cavs, right? Not so fast, people. Stay tuned for that debate. In preparation for the Olympics yesterday, falling to Australia 91-83. This latest loss raises even more concerns among those who think the U.S. team should be dominating these matchups. Prior to the game, our own Kedrick Perkins tweeted, "I got Team USA by 20 tonight. Don't at me and carry the hell on." Perk, your statistics are suffering, but I do love these bold predictions. You do swing for the fences. I'm not going to start with you, though. I'm going to start with Stephen A. Stephen A., things obviously not going as people thought they would for Team USA. Do you think we should be panicking at this point?
I wouldn't say panic. It's exhibition. It already looks bad, but it is an exhibition, no question about it. What I would tell you is that individual players should be on high alert. They don't, no matter what they say, they care about how they're perceived. They care about their quote unquote brand. They care about a lot of these things, particularly if you're somebody like Kevin Durant, who I believe is the best player on the planet when healthy. The bottom line is that if you lose something like this, no one ever wants to hear about you eclipsing LeBron again. They're not going to want to hear it. Yes, it's exhibition. It's Olympic play. It's not the NBA. But still, those kind of things are going to be counted against you, particularly when you're piggybacking off a season in which James Harden comes in there. He's not in shape. Kyrie Irving taking time off before he's back. Playoffs begin. He gets hurt. James Harden's never fully healthy during the postseason. You guys decide you don't really need a coach with any experience, so you Steve Nash coming on board. So many of these things are going to be brought up about KD. To a lesser degree with Lillard. Lillard's one of those dudes that I think he's a superstar. I think he's elevated his profile, et cetera, We all view him a bit differently than we used to, and we should, because he is a mega star. The flip side to it, again, is that when we look at this team and we see KD and Damian Lillard, but y'all lost, to some of the players on Argentina and Nigeria before that. That's a bad look.
Yeah, it is panic time. I mean, when I say panic, I don't mean run around like a chicken without a head, but yeah, you got to be super concerned right now if you're Team USA. There's a reason they've never lost 2 exhibitions in a row until now. Not only is the rest of the world caught up for a variety of reasons, they're getting better at basketball. It's the fastest growing team sport in the world. It's the best sport there is, let's face it. And as a result, the gap has narrowed. The rules favor lesser teams, like a closer three-point line. When things are made a little easier, it means that talent is leveled a little bit because you don't have to be as talented to do certain things. Okay, so there's an example on the margins that levels things a little bit. These international teams they're playing have 4 or 5 sometimes guys who are NBA-ish, sometimes half a dozen players who are NBA-ish type talent, either NBA or EuroLeague kind of level talent, like very high level talent. And more importantly, they've been playing together for years. They make multi-year commitments to their national teams. So if you were to take an all-star team in the NBA, let's say not all starters, 3 starters and 2 reserves, because that's the kind of team we sent. We didn't send Steph and Harden and Kawhi and LeBron and KD, right? That team couldn't lose if they tried. We didn't send 5 MVPs. We sent, some all-star starters and some reserves. If that team just got together, practiced for a couple weeks and had to play a team, even if it wasn't a playoff team, but an NBA team that had been playing together for a couple of years, they might lose. They might lose some games. That's possible. That's why in the NCAA tournament, a lot of one and done type teams don't usually win the whole thing unless it's a Kentucky team that has the number 1 and 2 picks in the draft. That's not the kind of team we sent this time. So without an absurd everyone on the team is an MVP caliber player type team, we're playing teams that play together and who want it more. And for the first time ever, have lost 2 exhibitions in a row.
Well, here it is. I'm not going to say it's time to panic because they have too much offensive firepower. They're too gifted offensively. I will say this, though. They have to get better on the defensive side of things. And when I look at the defensive side of things and watching Team USA, it's a reflection on who? And we have to address the elephant in the room, and it's Greg Popovich, right? In these last 2 games, he has been getting out coached. He has done a poor job of having these guys prepared for these games on the defensive side of things. And to take it to another level, what I just don't understand, and I'm not going at Greg Popovich as a person, I'm talking about as a basketball coach, and being part of a basketball coach, just like we hold players accountable with their meter, the way that they address the media, and we talk about how sensitive players are. That interview that he did last night and the disrespect that he showed towards Joe Biden last night was flat out ridiculous. I mean, the man was doing his job. Greg Popovich, he should have been mad at himself. He should have went screamed at himself. He talked to the man like he was a child. When was the last time Greg Popovich done something? When Tim Duncan was there, Kawhi Leonard left. Well, Kawhi Leonard left and showed the world that I don't need Pop. I can go win the ring on my own. But besides all that, listen, here it is, okay? Greg Popovich has to humble himself. We watch all-time great coaches like John Thompson be one of class act guys when it comes to the media. We watch Red Auerbach be a class act guy when it comes to the media. Y'all take light to Greg Popovich and those little comments he be making to the media and saying, "Oh, that's just Pop." I take it as a sign of disrespect. Just like we hold players accountable and say that they shouldn't be sensitive. It's their job to do the media. It's also head coach's job to make sure that they meet the requirements to do the media.
Well, let me say this to you. Greg Popovich has been truculent on a lot of occasions. And when I think that Greg Popovich needs to be called out is that in large part, he is the one who's instigated load management. What he did with guys, I remember an all-time story. Y'all have heard the story before, but it's worth repeating over the national airwaves. Because of his personal beef with former Commissioner David Stern, God rest his soul, They had a nationally televised game, and Greg Popovich, he hated doing the interviews during the game, and, he hated back-to-backs, and obviously he didn't take kindly to those things, and everybody that covers the NBA knows that Greg Popovich had a beef with David Stern over that stuff. Well, one time they had a nationally televised game in Miami against LeBron and the Heat, and Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker were spotted at a Chick-fil-A in Orlando. And that's how we all found out they weren't going to be playing that night, because Popovich sent them home on Southwest Airlines. That's a true story, okay? This is what Popovich does. So
weren't there times they didn't even get on the plane to go to the city?
That's
they just left them at home.
They left Orlando because they played Orlando the night before. They went there. Now, so Perk is right about Popovich and what Popovich has gotten away with to some degree. What I would say to you, Perk, is last night is not a good example. The man, Greg Popovich, said, "Can I finish my thought? And then I'll listen to you. Let me finish. And then once I finish, I'll listen to you respond." And there's absolutely nothing wrong with him. I say he wasn't raising, wasn't screaming at the guy, anything like that. He's entitled to do that.
No, you're right. In terms of one person speaks, you listen, the next person speaks. Let me just say one thing, Perk. But the fact that he was talking about, the reporter was actually right about the exhibition games.
Well, actually,
the 54-2 versus the two losses, they've already reached the loss to it. So that's what he's saying. The reporter was trying to interrupt to say, like, no.
I don't think that's actually. I think the argument was your blowouts. Pop objected to the use of the term blowout. He goes,
yes, because in the
and
exhibition games.
Right, the reporter said, here's the average point differential in the losses.
Yeah.
And Popovich's point seemed to me to be, forget about the average for a second. Sometimes we do blow out teams. Against the good teams, under these circumstances, usually there aren't blowouts. That's the argument they were having, it seems to me.
Max, look, Max, Stephen A. Miley, I don't even care about, it wasn't what Pop said, it's how he said it. And if you go back and look at that interview, he was talking to that man as if he was a damn child. And that's not how it go. I was raised up in a household where my grandparents told me, you respect the janitor just like you'll respect the principal. And that's not how that interview came across last night. So if y'all go back and watch that and tell me that y'all got this, that y'all seen anything different the way Pop addressed that grown man last night, then y'all tripping.
I've seen Popovich significantly worse, and maybe that's no excuse, but I've seen him significantly worse, and I found nothing wrong with him saying, "Can I finish my thought? And then I'll listen to you. Could you let me finish my sentence?"
He didn't say it like that, though, Stephen A. He didn't say it like that.
We played the tape a few minutes ago.
But it wasn't with that tone. He said it with a type of aggression that was uncalled for.
Perk, I'll say this. That at first I agree with you. He gave the Popovich thing that sometimes Belichick does, that Bill Parcells used to bullying the reporter a little bit. When the reporter stood up for himself, then Popovich said, "Let me finish," and the reporter wouldn't. I actually felt at that point the reporter was being a little rude. And Popovich said, "And then I'll listen to you." And once he said that, I think it was all right.
All right.
Okay.
And what does Grandma say about the way you speak to me on this show? That's what I want to know, Perk.
I'm with you, Perk, though. At the end of the day, we're all the same. You got to treat everyone the same. It shows a lot about somebody's character. All right, we will leave it there. When we come back, still to come, wait until you hear what LeBron said about how many more years he plans on playing for the Lakers if it was up to him. You don't want to miss that. Season number 3 in LA didn't exactly go as planned for LeBron James. What was hoped to be a repeat championship season was instead filled with injuries and an early playoff exit. King James doesn't see himself going anywhere, though. Here he is talking about his plans for the future.
I really hope that I can finish my career with the Lakers, and how many years that is, if it's 4, 5, 6, whatever, 7.
There we go.
I hope I can continue to play the game. I love being in LA. My family loves being in LA. Being with a historical franchise like the Lakers is something like, it's like me, being in Space Jam now. I never thought it'd be possible. You think about Kareem and Magic and Wilt and Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, Kobe, Shaq, all the whole list goes on.
LeBron seems to be living his best life, loving being in LA, loving playing for the Lakers. He mentioned, he could play 5, 6 years. We could see what happens, kind of like Tom Brady. Stephen A., let me ask you this. If he does play 5 more years, what team will he most be remembered for playing with?
Well, listen, a lot of people will easily say Cleveland. The championship, erased the 52-year curse from Akron, Ohio. To me, it's the Miami Heat. 4 years, Hold on, I'm just getting a little emotional right now. You know, just
You're most remembered in Miami.
it was
This is the highlight of your life.
You most remembered the trips to Miami. This isn't about LeBron.
It was so special. It was just so special. And I got to tell you, to go to the finals 4 straight years, to win the championship, you know, I mean, hey, LeBron James, you know, some of those alley-oops D-Wade was throwing to him, even though it was in a road uniform at the Staples Center, when LeBron James came back from 27 down against Cleveland and just stared at the crowd and stuff like that, when LeBron jumped over, John Lucas, and it was, there's just so many special moments that you have seen LeBron do in a Miami Heat uniform, and then it's the American Airlines Arena is right there near Biscayne Bay, and the yachts outside and the sunshine and the whole nine. And with D-Wade as his teammate, looking at some of those outfits D-Wade used to walk into the arena with.
D-Wade can dress.
Sometimes. Yeah, that's my brother right there. I love him to death. But let me say this. He's very courageous. There's certain things that I would never even try. I'll give him that credit. But in all seriousness, I just think that 4-year period, what it meant to basketball, what LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh with Ray Allen and the crew, what it meant to basketball. There's nothing that LeBron does that's more, the word's memorable to me. There's nothing that he's done that's more memorable than that.
I think the most memorable thing he did was the comeback in 2016 against the Warriors, actually. I think that's his greatest accomplishment. And the not 3, not 4, not 5, that's big. That's why it's a good question. The answer is, if he plays another, say, 5 years, because he said whether it's 4, 5, 6, 7 more years, let's say he plays another 5 years with the Lakers. I'm going to say he wins at least one more championship. What that would mean is he played twice as many seasons in LA as in Miami. It means he will have won twice as many championships on the Lakers as with the Cavs. It means he will be remembered primarily as a Laker. Tough, everybody. That's the way it is. The Lakers are the most important franchise. The Lakers as a franchise, take every other franchise in the NBA, combine them. Doesn't equal the Lakers. Reggie Jackson, Stephen A., you and I grew up with Reggie Jackson.
Mr. October, right? Mr. October.
Mr. October. Played 10 seasons altogether with the Athletics, 5 with the Yankees, right?
Yep.
Won 3 World Series with the Athletics, 2 with the Yankees. Started his career and ended his career with the Athletics. What do you go in the Hall of Fame at? A Yankee. That's the way it goes.
Not the same. Let me go back at you, and I'm going to give it back to you. But let me go back at you with this. Number one, even though he won 3 rings with the Athletics, he didn't do. He hit 3 home runs in a single World Series game.
Consecutive pitches.
You understand what I'm saying? I mean, 19. Come on, man. That's much special.
Mr. October.
Okay, no question. So he didn't do that. That's number one. Number two, LeBron and his greatness, no matter what. You understand? He will never even be on the Mount Rushmore of basketball.
Sure.
All right. Let me say, you and I agree with this, that if he won a couple of more titles, okay, I got that. But memorable
of Lakers Mount Rushmore, you mean? Lakers Mount
Rushmore. There is no way in hell that LeBron James will be more remembered as a Laker than he is as a Miami Heat. Oh, no. He won't even be more remembered as a Laker than he will as a Cleveland Cavalier. I'm telling you right now, Miami and Miami with Pat Riley, with D-Wade.
That was the best version of LeBron.
Oh.
Yes.
But
can I just say one thing, and I'm not trying to debate you guys, but I feel like this is a little bit about your personal agendas. It's you in Miami, the glory days, LeBron in his glory days. It's you when he came back on the Warriors.
So negative.
No. Let me just finish. I've been going to Miami since I'm a teen. You don't need to twist my arm on Miami. I love that city. I'm not commenting on any other cities, but I truly enjoy the city of Miami, and I will leave it at that. Not just you, Stephen A. Okay, let's stay focused.
Hold on.
Wait.
But to get to your point, though.
No, I didn't get to it. You don't know where I'm going.
You say negative. You say
no. I'm not saying negative. I'm saying it has to be Cleveland. Like, if he had to pick a jersey to retire in, it has to be. He's the kid from Akron.
Yeah, that's fine. But in terms of more memorable, which one is it?
I think it's because he went back. He went back to his hometown and he delivered the
championship.
He delivered the promise.
There are 3 big storylines, and the difficulty with arguing the Lakers' position right now is the fact is the question is if he plays another 5 years in LA.
That's
now,
fair,
I'm
Max.
assuming
I don't care.
those 5 years will be at a high level.
No, that one
You're right
tugs
to
at
bring
your
that up.
heartstrings.
No. Max is right to bring that up because we're projecting. But I will say this. You're entitled to have these personal feelings if they're supported by objective facts.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation, Molly, is this.
What?
What I'm saying about it ain't wrong in terms of how memorable that time in Miami was. It's just supported by the fact that I loved it so much.
You could make a
Mine's-
good argument for
mine's
any one of
supported by hometown
Molly,
hero.
you could make a good argument for any one of the three teams.
I will-
You can't just act like, oh, it's Cleveland or it's Miami or it's LA.
I would openly confess this on national television. ESPN sent me to Miami on numerous occasions.
Oh, Lord.
Late night, early morning. I had to work long hours. There was never a complaint. Ever. About my having to work in Miami.
Excuse me.
God, goodbye.
I will admit that.
Excuse me. I know you're under the weather, but isn't there going to be another finals game in Milwaukee coming up?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I'll be there unless I'm too stuffy,
I'm looking forward
plan
to
on
going
being
to Milwaukee, and I'm going to get a tour of the city, and it's going to be great, and I'm looking
The
forward to it.
fans have been great to me. The
Yeah.
fans have been great.
Listen, I married someone from the Midwest.
Listen,
Good people.
I'm cool with it. I mean, listen, great fans.
All right, guys.
Yeah, the Lakers.
No. When we come back here on First Take, let's talk some NFL. I can't believe you said basketball is the greatest sport. Get out of here, Max.
What's better than basketball?
The NFL.
And why is the NBA the fastest growing sport around the world?
What about in America? Speaking of beefs, Stephen A. standing up for his Steelers, while Max, he's still riding that Browns train. Someday your prediction might come true, Max. We're going to get into Patrick Mahomes' shade on Justin Herbert and the latter beef.
NFL is now America's pastime. There's no doubt about it. It's obviously no longer
Absolutely.
baseball. It's obviously football.
It's still the
Yeah.
king here. It's not
But
even
around
close.
the world, it's basketball.
Of course.